Let me talk you through this timeline. To have a good overview, I'm going to make the timeline larger by resizing this window pane. I'm also going to zoom out to make sure the timeline fills my screen, but doesn't extend beyond my screen. I'm using 2 video tracks and 2 audio tracks. Even though this track here is called narration, it works exactly like an audio track. Let's look at the structure of my timeline. First, the opening title. It starts with a title that fades in, and at the same time the music also fades in and out. Second, the lead-in or stand-up. This is made up of 3 shots: the sheep that appears on the instrument, the sheep in medium shot, and the xylophone in detail shot. The soundtrack is the sound of xylophone. Towards the end, the sound fades out slowly. Third, the footage borrowed from 1950s television. Downloaded from YouTube. In this footage, the voice of the presenter has been replaced for 2 parts of his speech with my own voice. To do this, I had to speak in exactly the same rhythm and intonation as him. Notice how the sound of this footage starts to fade in as the previous sound recording fades out. This is called a crossfade. They overlap. Crossfades create a very smooth transition in your video. Finally, an example is shown for distorted sound. The sound of this clip has been destroyed on purpose to show you what it sounds like when a recording has been made with the sound levels too high. Now we are going to rebuild the soundtrack of this video. Here you can see the video's image track. This is a kind of skeleton of the video. The only sound left is the original sound of the television show. We are going to start by creating some space at the beginning of the timeline. We now want to select all the clips. To achieve this, we are going to zoom out so that we can see everything. Then we press Ctrl and A on our keyboard. Alternatively, we can draw a selection marquee or rectangle around all the clips. When selected, they all change color. They turn brighter. Now move all the clips some seconds to the right. This way we create space for the music track. We now are going to find a xylophone tune among our recordings. Click and drag the waveforms to their place under the opening title. We want the music to start before the image so that we can make the sound slowly fade in. This is why we position it earlier than the start of the title. Now let's create the fade-in. A fade-in is a slow increase of volume. In other words, we control the volume to go higher over the course of some seconds. We do this by adding so-called keyframes. A keyframe is a controller that sets a value on the volume level. We measure volume in decibels, the unit used to measure the intensity of sound. We need to go from silence to music, from a value of minus infinite decibels to the right sound level of about 0 to 2 decibels. We are going to position 2 keyframes on the sound clip. Press and hold the control button while moving the mouse over the yellow volume line. When you see a plus sign appear, click the left button on your mouse. Now you will drag the first white ball or keyframe down to a value of silence, all the way to the bottom. If you make the slope steep, the fade-in will be faster. If you make the slope slowly rising, the fade-in will be slower. We will follow the reverse positions for the fade-out. We can now add the voiceover of the stand-up. Since it's a clean recording, we don't have to start it with a fade-in. At the end of the voiceover, we want to create a music transition from the stand-up to the next part, the television footage. We're going to repeat the process with the same xylophone tune and the keyframes or white balls as before. This time, however, we want to create an overlap between the music of the xylophone and the music of the jazz band. How to do that? It's quite the same as before. We make the fade out of the first clip overlap the fade in of the second. This is called crossfading. It will only work if we use two different tracks, one for the sound that's fading out and one for the sound that's fading in. Simple as that. Next, we will replace the original speech of the TV host with my voice. We will not change anything in the image of the man. Therefore, it's a good idea to unlink the image and the sound, because we are going to manipulate the sound only. Right-click on the clip and choose Unlink Audio and Video. Then click into the gray zone next to the clip to deselect both. Now let's find the point where my speech lines up with his speech. This kind of work calls for some precision. If you press the left-right buttons of your cursor, those little arrows we use for navigation, then you can move frame by frame in a clip. That's the most precise we can get. We're going to cut the sound clip of the original to separate it from the rest. Then we're going to turn the volume to 0. Once the replacement voice is finished, we make another cut. Now we can give the man his voice back. We're going to repeat this procedure a second time for my second lip sync recording. Now let's correct sound digitally. One section of my recording seems to lack sound power. It's simply not loud and rich enough. I can correct it now by using audio gain. Right-click the clip, choose audio gain, enter the value of 6 decibels by clicking the number here and typing 6. Click OK. Now the waveform has become thicker and the recording has a much healthier sound level. Distortions are done the same way. By setting the audio gain too high, we get a distorted clip. Look at that sound wave. It has become a single block of noise. And finally, the sound mix. This is what we've been working for all this time. When you finish your editing, you need to check that the sound is consistent throughout the video. In other words, the sound should stay constant without parts being very silent and other parts being very loud. Nothing could be more annoying for the viewer. To make this happen, we are going to use the trusty audio meters. Click Window and Audio Meters. Place your audio meter on the right-hand side of the timeline. Now start playing your video and observe the audio levels throughout the video. Do you see a clip that stays too low towards the value of -18 or lower? Make that clip louder. Do you see a clip that reaches the red range on the meter above the value of -6? Lower the sound of that clip. In some cases, when things get too bad, you might have to re-record the sound of a certain clip. A good sound mix means that all values remain in the range of -12 to -6.